Why are you lighting a match? This is so going to be between two ferns. I'm scared. You're lighting sage? What is the...
So Alli, let's just jump into it.
I have my crystal here. So
I'm
going to put this, I'm going to put this by the laptop so that I'm getting positive energy. I'm going to be positive.
I thought that was the Washington Memorial. I didn't think that was a crystal.
No, it's a crystal. It does kind of look like the Washington Memorial. That's cool.
I have another one. You guys gave those out at a Churn Zero conference. So.
I have another one here too.
So I'm used to seeing crystals of varieties of shapes, but those are all the same shape. Is this a certain thing?
Okay, here's a different.
Okay.
Tiger eye, so that's a different shape.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, I have a couple. Do you want me to show you all of the crystals that I have?
I think my 5 listeners would find that fascinating, but I think we're just gonna start rolling along here.
Could we jump into the professional topic, perhaps? None of this pre-stuff is going in.
It absolutely 100% is going in, right? Absolutely. So for people listening, Alli is a former coworker of mine from a different region. So just to be clear, we didn't sit near each other. We weren't talking about,
spent very little time together.
Right. And of all the people in the Western office in San Francisco, you're probably like I'd say middle of the pack for people that I like to work with and things like that, right?
There were 8 of us in the office. So it was probably in the bottom 2, maybe.
Bottom of the middle. So this is great. And then I know you worked at some companies that were racked with scandals, so I'm not going to get into that. But
there was only one scandal-filled company, just one. We won't discuss that.
No,
it was actually a really good company, though. Great people. I learned a lot. I learned a lot from that company.
I learned a ton from one of my scandal-filled companies. One of mine, because it seems to follow me for some reason. But
scandal follows you everywhere.
I don't know why. But so Alli, you are the CCO of Churn Zero. That's your name still in my contact list on my phone. Just as CCO Churn Zero.
Nice. I don't even have a first name or a surname. I appreciate that. I'm just the CCO.
Yeah. I mean, someday, I don't know.
I don't think you actually know my first name, but that's okay.
Well,
Andrew
the one I like to call you,
me Allison.
Yeah. I mean, that rolls off the tongue more naturally, but you always, for some reason, so.
My kids also call me Chief at home. I require that.
So this podcast is brought to you by Infinite Renewals. So I just wanted to state that out here. It's good.
I'm really happy to be here, Jeff. Thank you very much for inviting me. This is now where we're going to officially start the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for finally showing up. I appreciate that. It's good. So we're glad to have you. And we have some questions from the internet to go over.
I saw those. I might have a couple of challenging responses to some of those questions. So
you don't have no problems rocking the boat. But before that, I want a straight up answer from you on this one question. It should be pretty easy to answer. The GSD podcast, great podcast or greatest podcast?
By far greatest. No,
okay.
by far greatest. Absolutely. I mean, fantastic title, great people. You always have really good, interesting people on. And you do.
I expected. Oh my God. So let me ask you this question. Which competitor do you hate the most?
I'm not going to answer that question because look, I think there's plenty of space for good tech in customer success. I think a lot of customer success teams need tech. So I think that there's room for all of us.
So I saw Alli's mouth moving, but I only heard Hunter's voice. So
We're
okay. So for
we're
everybody listening, Alli and I, this is
so-
how we always chat, but we thought it would be funny to do a little bit of between two ferns type of a thing because we've got a very interesting work relationship here. And the fact that, I don't know, well, I think you guys can see what's going on here. It's pretty clear to everyone.
Yeah, I believe I was watching the Between Two Ferns that you sent me, the Bradley Cooper and
It's a good one.
Galifianakis. Yeah. And trying to figure out which one of us is which here. But
I think it's pretty clear.
Fine.
I think it's
What?
pretty clear. I think it's pretty clear.
Pretty clear. That's pretty clear. I'm definitely Zach. Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I thought was fantastic about that was that the line that Bradley Cooper said around, why are you being so mean to me? Because I feel like
I've said that to you
that
many times.
is something we say to each other on almost a daily
Well, no, you do a little bit more of a passive aggressive one, right? You say, so-and-so said to me, why is he so mean to you? Right? It's a very common marriage tactic. Like all my friends ask me, is Jeff really like that?
I can't believe you're going to bring that up. I can't believe you're going to bring that up. Oh my gosh.
So forecasting.
Actually, forecasting is one of my favorite topics. And I love talking about forecasting because I think, unfortunately, a lot of CS professionals get super intimidated by that. It's one of the reasons why I think CS professionals in the past, I think this year has proven that it's really important to own a number.
Yep.
But I think there has been resistance to owning a number in the past because of forecasting, right? Because it's like, oh my God, I got to do all this math. It's hard, it's scary.
So there's that, but isn't there the other thing too, which is, oh God, Alli, that I don't want to talk about money with my customers. That violates our friendship. And I feel like we have this bond, like we met at like apple picking, and I really liked your purse.
Exactly. It's a business relationship, folks.
Right. You wouldn't know these people unless they signed a contract with specific terms in front of it.
Exactly. Everything is a negotiation in life. Everything is a negotiation in business. And that doesn't mean the relationship is transactional. It just means this is a business relationship and we have to have these discussions. And quite frankly, your customers expect that of you.
I agree.
Which is where I want to get into the controversial topic of CSM sentiment.
Oh.
Because in your blog posts or LinkedIn post, we're going to get a little controversial. You said that you spoke to some of the greatest CS minds and they all agreed.
CS data minds, my data ops friends, yes.
That CSM sentiment is hugely important. And I want to take a little bit of a different tack on that. In all seriousness, I sometimes think that we can over-index a little bit on CSM sentiment when we consider CSM sentiment to be the CSM's gut feeling about,
yes,
right? Or about the relationship, the status of the relationship. And what I would like to encourage your plethora of listeners out there.
It just never ends.
That was encouraging. That was a positive statement. Is to think about CSM sentiment a little differently and think about it as CSM's risk assessment, right, of the customer. And I think of risk assessment, and then I think of health score, right? And I think of risk assessment as your leading indicators and your health score as kind of your lagging indicators, right? And so when you think about a CSM doing a risk assessment, you're thinking about, okay, how was the implementation, right? Did everything go well in the implementation or did it not? Are you single threaded in the account? What is the status of the business? Have they had rifts? Have they gotten funding, right? What's the status of the data, right? Was it quality data? Is the data poor? What about ICP, right? Was this actually a good fit in the sales process? Did you identify use cases in the sales process?
Mhm.
That should be what the CSM is assessing every single time they're talking to their customer. And give it a score. Give it a score so that it
So
actually
something very quantitative, essentially.
But it is. I think we get into too much trouble. And I personally have been caught up in this where you're relying upon a CSM's quote unquote relationship,
Mhm.
right, with the buyer, or maybe not the buyer, but with their contact. And then a CFO comes in and says, no,
Right.
right. And you can be caught off guard.
On that note, when you're running your team and going through a forecast and everything, are you doing a red, yellow, green, or are you doing I like a more of a sales led thing, which is like commit, closed one, things like that. Like what are the risks? What is going on here? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we look at it with probability and stages, right? And then we also look at how many dollars do you think you're actually going to get? We actually ask our CSMs to come up with the dollar amount they think they're going to get for each account. I think the way we run our team is much more sales minded. And I think that's actually very healthy.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a skill that a lot of people need. And I think it's a healthy skill for CSMs to have.
That's why you said all CCOs should report to the CRO, right?
No, but I don't think that.
By the way, I'm not all the way joking on that one.
And I want to answer that actually seriously. Yeah. I don't think it is problematic for a chief customer officer to be paired with a CRO or to report into a CRO. I think we are actually going to see customer success move more in a direction of owning those numbers, owning those dollars. We've got to stop shying away from account management is so different than customer success. I think you're going to see a lot more of consolidation in the next couple of years. We're already seeing it. I think you're going to see more of it. So embrace the change, get good at forecasting, understand what tools are out there, not just Salesforce. There are other tools, CSPs, good CSPs.
It's like Salesforce is like Kleenex, right? It's like you're using the brand name instead of the actual facial tissue, right?
Exactly.
Right. But everybody says CSP. So there we go. So
there you go.
Yeah, that isn't, and I know we're getting a little off topic there, but I've always said that so the whole report into the CEO is so you can have a seat at the table. And if you report to somebody, you're probably not at the table, which is a lie and things like that. But if you've got some CEO type who's never run sales and and does not know how to run like a good forecast and a good pipeline, they're not going to do you any good if you've not gone through this either, right?
Exactly. It's really important to learn that skill set and to learn it quickly, because quite frankly, I think if you're at the chief customer officer level, you're going to be expected to know how to forecast, right? So you're going to have to learn it somewhere. So the idea that we're having these teams report into sales, again, it's healthy to embrace that because you're going to learn a lot. And I think you're also going to have a lot more respect for what sales teams do, right? Because there's always that struggle between pre-sales and post-sales, right? And I think we need to let go of that.
When
healthy about a CRO, a reporting relationship is that you have that, right?
Oh no, absolutely. I was curious, to make an analogy here, you know how when you're a project manager and you're doing some estimates on a project and the dev says 20 hours and you're like, I'm going to pad that up a little bit, right? How do you approach that with your teams when they're like, oh yeah, like absolutely going to crush this quarter, 95% probability, we're good to go?
Well, I think that's why I struggle with the CSM sentiment, right? You have to balance it with the data. And we certainly, I certainly have people on my team who love to do that, right? And then you say, okay, well, this is what the health score or the churn score that we use at Churn Zero, this is what the data is actually showing, right? How are you going to say that you're going to knock out this account when your customer hasn't logged in for a month, right?
Yeah.
Like you're guaranteeing me the renewal, but your customer hasn't logged in for a month.
So
right?
let me double down on this because that's an easy one, but let's get into the ones where you really want to kick over some rocks and get into the do we really think? Are there several other smaller ones, a death by 1,000 paper cuts approach, or sort of how like I'm just very untrusting on pipeline numbers, right? And I like to go in and ask these questions, right? Like, can you get it signed early? Okay, you're 6 weeks out. What are the things that are going to happen? What would happen if why don't you put a contract in front of them right now then? Like all those types of things.
Well, right.
But I'm not coming from the data background that you're coming from. Like, so I'm curious about, because I feel like the logins, like people always use two ones that I think aren't the easiest ones to go off of. One's logging in and one's support tickets, which can mean a totally
different things. Yeah, totally different things. I think login is a start, right? But you actually need to know usage. You actually need to know who is using what feature, right? And so specifically, do you have somebody who is more of an administrator, depending on what type of product you have, right? Do you have somebody who's just more of an administrator and they're, logging in and maybe they're doing some reporting? That doesn't necessarily guarantee, right, that you're going to get the renewal from that. You need to know that there is license utilization across the board. Is everybody going in and using different features, right? So I think that is the critical piece. And then I think the other critical piece is, how multi-threaded are you in the account? Like if you are a CSM and you're only having one discussion with your quote unquote champion, or you're having multiple discussions with your quote unquote champion, but you're not talking to end users, or you're not talking to your champion's boss or the economic buyer, like those are pretty big risks in an account.
Let me ask you this, especially since you work for a company whose name has churn in it. What are the three biggest factors of churn? Because it gets back to what you were just saying. I'm just trying to bubble it up a little bit.
The biggest factors for churn is, to me, are really how did the implementation go, right? And then it's what kind of adoption you have in the product. And then I think the next is, do you understand why the customer bought your product, and are they achieving what they set out to achieve with your product?
Almost correct.
I'm always correct, Jeff, but okay, what's your opinion?
I think you got a 98.5 on that answer.
Oh, not acceptable. I'm only 99 and above. So what in your opinion do you think
I would just well, obviously, if you go out for drinks, that's another thing. But no, on the value thing, right? Does that business owner, are they getting the feedback that they're getting the value, right? I signed up to get these three things. You could be looking at the data saying like, oh yeah, we're good to go. Are you actually having those conversations and showing like you wanted these three outcomes
and we've delivered
getting them, or we're 4 months out from renewing and we're 2 out of 3 right now. So let's go work on that third one.
Figure out how to, yeah, absolutely. But I think that kind of goes back to the concept of, multi-threaded in an account. You can't just be relying on your, yeah, it is, because I don't know that, no, seriously, I don't know that, I think a lot of CSMs have really good relationships with 1 or 2 people in an account, and they rely way too heavily on that.
Well, yeah, what I see is sales signs up with this business owner, they push it down, implementation and CSM, to some other admin person, and that's it, right?
That's it. And they never go back and speak to that economic buyer. They never go back and speak to that business owner around, hey, this is what we've actually
CFO
we've
and exec,
accomplished.
hey, listen, Joe Bob, we got to go through all
Right.
the vendors that you have here. What about this? And they're like, you haven't heard from them at all. I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no, exactly.
And that's like the number one thing I see out there, like that lack of touch to the people who actually, sign the checks essentially.
Sign the checks. Yes. Who?
Send those QBRs to the CFO too. Like they can only not read them, right? So
yes.
Yeah.
Did we actually agree on something?
Almost. You tried to hedge on the fact, but it's fine. It's fine. We're almost there. It's good. Hey, listen, I have some questions here for you. I wanted to make sure we got from the internet, right?
Yes.
All right. Because Alli was concerned we didn't have any questions for her. So here we go. So
no, I was concerned that you didn't prep the questions ahead of time, which is very common practice with podcasts.
Oh, so you're saying they usually get fed a list of questions so you can just ace it and come out and just...
I'm just saying that it's common to, it's common practice to be like, okay, we're going to go over a couple of these things. Obviously,
yeah, I believe we sat down over drinks in person and we talked about what we would talk about on this.
We didn't specifically. I think it was more like, when are you going to do this podcast? I've been asking you forever to do this podcast. And I'm like, I told you I would do it, Jeff. What do we want to talk about?
Yeah. Forecasting.
Specifically go into forecasting.
See, I respected you on a level where I think like we don't need to have extensive prep. Like, this shit down cold and you should just be able to answer it like we were two humans conversing.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Well, that was well done. Okay. All right. So the internet questions, how can I be helpful?
I do have to apologize because they used your full birth name on this. So don't do your normal thing that you do to me when I say this. Okay. Okay. I'd be interested in learning Allison's thoughts on the impact of automated communications about renewal in the 90 to 150 days ahead of the renewal deadline. Would also be intrigued to hear Allison's thoughts in the statistics. Wow, I can't speak. The statistical impact of account team turnover, both CS and sales, on renewal rates.
So let's address the automated emails, 120 days out. It's great. You absolutely need to do them. You can't rely on them to be the only form of communication that you have.
We're just talking about auto renew, fly out, good to go, move on.
No, I mean, you have to do them. And I actually recommend that people do them even sooner than they think they should, right? Like a lot of times customers will think they need to, or companies will think that they need to do it at like 90 days out. I think 90 days out is way too late. You should be prepping those conversations much earlier. I think at the 6-month mark, you should be really having conversations with customers about the renewal. You got to understand, to your point, if there were 3 reasons why the customer bought your product and you've only accomplished 2, you need extra time to figure out how to get to 3, right? Yeah. So the sooner you can start sending
Especially if your implementation's bad and you're still in implementation.
Absolutely.
That, my friend, sucks. That's not fun.
That is a
I should say killer. If it's beyond what you say, if you've got a complicated product, not like yours, that takes over 6 months to get out there, then absolutely. Okay, yeah. It's good. Good.
So, but there was a second part of the question that was around.
Yeah, it's around team turnover, like how that impacts renewal rates.
So look, it is not comfortable. It is not comfortable for any company to have to transition a new CSM, but this is the reality of the world and we're not going to escape it. At the end of the day, companies and customers don't churn because of a CSM. They churn because they are lacking value from the product and from the experience. That's why customers churn.
Got it.
That was super profound, wasn't it? I mean, you were silent there. You were like, wow.
I was thinking about the massage that I have booked after this. So, all right.
You're so mean to me.
I've heard that from your friends. All right. So, sorry. I super apologize to the 5
The
listeners.
audience, anybody that's going to listen to this poor thing.
The way that just a little inflection on anybody that you put there, it's so, that is a pro move. The fact that you don't even know what's coming out is just amazing. Just, I applaud you. I only hope to get to that level someday in my 80s or something. Okay, for Alli Tiscornia, about regular check-ins and customer feedback. Can you dial up the accuracy more depending on the level of customers you interact with? Outside of the economic or tech buyer, do you get a better sense of renewal from talking to the people actively using the product and managing the initiative? We kind of
covered that one. Yeah. Yes. And the answer is yes, please do. Have as many conversations with as many people as you possibly can. You're going to get a better sense of what's going on with the account.
Yes. And I think what Alli is saying here is that's a conversation. That's not, we have 60 minutes, so I have 58 slides put together here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's a conversation.
Yeah. So Alli, if you were to go talk to some startups versus some mid-sized companies versus...
And I love startups. Yes, Jeff?
Sure. So does your approach change, right? We think about your 3 CSMs versus the team of 15 versus the team of 50, right?
Right. Of course. I mean, you're going to have a much more automated digital experience. If you've got 3 CSMs and you've got, hundreds of accounts, that's fine. But I think actually those touch points, and it becomes even more critical for you to be showing the value through that automation, right? You actually have to be providing the data around what value they're getting out of it. But I think that what's interesting about the digital experience is that you can have more reach, right? If I'm talking about how important multi-threading is in an account, if you have a digital experience, you are going to be able to reach more people. And again, not just with emails, you're not trying to email them to death or having, a 56 slide PowerPoint. It's more of that, it's more of sending them a video or talking to them about a webinar or talking to them about the 3 things that you've been able to accomplish with the product, or they've been able to accomplish with the product.
But how do you do that at scale when you're, scale CSM? You've got 400 to 1,000 accounts. Is it like record one video and then splice in the name 1,000 times, or?
No, I think personalization is important. I think personalization is key, but I think that there's ways that you can kind of hack the personalization, right? Through things, like videos, like webinars.
I've bored you. I saw the energy.
No,
I
think I struggle sometimes in a question like this because I know people want super concrete answers, and I hate to say things like,
it depends.
See,
take a stand,
I try
Alli.
to steer
It's
clear.
okay.
I try to steer clear of that, but I think unfortunately you do have to kind of unpack, what is the product? What can you do with personalization specific to that product? What is the product doing for that customer? It is a little hard to answer that in a, all encompassing.
Yeah. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to ask another very specific question then, just for that.
Fantastic. I'm sure I will stumble over this one as well. Yes.
Makes you human-ish. So what do you do for the customers that have made it completely clear, like, I'm good, I don't want to hear from you, I'm using the product, just don't reach out to me?
I think that's where you get your marketing department involved with creative ways to come up with content that's going to be important to them and interesting to them. Yeah. So, and I totally respect that from certain, customers who are like, hey, we got this. We don't need, we don't need a status meeting. We don't need a weekly meeting. So it's like, okay, we got to figure out what's going to be interesting and relevant to that customer to just continue to kind of, nudge them along and let them know that you are actually making progress. So I would definitely reach out to marketing to get some
And to
help.
bring it back to the original topic for the show, how are you forecasting these low
Low touch customers.
high volume customers? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where you really do have to rely very heavily on those health scores, right? And you have to understand, you have to have a health score built out. It's going to be pretty hard for you not to be able to forecast without a health score, without an automation tool, right? To see what your customer is doing in your product.
Yeah. Which also then would totally invalidate my statement about CSM sentiment, especially when you've got a plethora of customers.
Right. You're not going to be able to rely on that, right? You're going to have to rely on the data.
Yeah. What do you think are the biggest, mistakes that CSMs make around this, around when they're giving you the forecast? Is it around trusting their gut?
Yes. It's around trusting their gut and relying on one relationship.
Yeah.
They have a really good relationship. They have gone out for drinks with this particular person, right?
Yeah.
And they are not understanding the economic conditions of the company, the customer's company, or what other impacts there might be to that person's job. That person, maybe they do have a great relationship, but they don't understand that maybe that person is being put into a different role. Maybe that person is looking to leave the company, right? You can't be so reliant upon your relationship with just one person.
This is interesting. How would you classify it as data points? Like, imagine you're asking the good questions, like, "Hey, how are things going?
Mm-hmm.
Or have you had any layoffs? Or how are these layoffs affecting you?" and stuff like that. I feel like those would give me a more educated CSM sentiment point.
Mm-hmm. It would, but it wouldn't just be about asking the questions, right? Then you got to go back and I think do a little bit of research and see not just what that person is telling you internally, but then go see if it marries up with what you're saying on LinkedIn, right? And what you're saying in terms of news alerts that you're getting on what's going on with that company.
Yeah.
It's lots of easy information to go out there and find out. Yeah.
Awesome. What are we missing here? What have we not covered?
I do want to go back to the fact that forecasting is very much reliant on data, but it is still a little bit of an art as well. So you do have to, like you said, around if you were talking about scoping out a project, right? And relying upon one person's, your developer's assessment of how long something is going to take. Oh yeah, it takes 3 minutes to install a job.
I got that done in 2 hours, 20 hours. Got you.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. The more sophisticated and the better you get at forecasting, you pad that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to.
You're saying you bluebird your way through forecasts with your senior team?
I do not bluebird my way. I do like bluebirds. I will take the bluebirds, but I never count the bluebirds. I never forecast my bluebirds. Those are just a little extra,
cool
right?
If you do. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Those are little extra things that come in.
Love it.
We're excited about, but yeah. But you can't
there was a renewal
sandbag
out there, and suddenly they said, "Wait, add 20 seats in there." I'm like, "Oh my God, what a surprise!"
Oh, this is fantastic. But you can't sandbag either, right? You can't also say nothing's going to come in, right?
Yeah, it's a clever line, right? What's the healthy percentage you're shooting for accuracy?
So I think if you can get within 2% of your number.
Wow, look at you, public company, Alli. Wow.
Hey, come on. The better you get at it, the better you get at it. If you can get within 2 points, come on.
It's got to be tough. And this is going to sound like I'm poking fun, but I'm not. But it's got to be tough when you have this mistrusting of the team to not sandbag, right? I'll admit I'm pretty much pessimistic around these areas.
Yeah, I think in all seriousness, I think that's why really good CS leaders are going to go through that forecast line by
Yeah,
line
right.
by line, right? And one of the things that I have done, not just I do today, but at previous companies, you got to have a forecast meeting, just like sales has a forecast meeting. It's got to be a weekly meeting. You're going to go through the
Absolutely.
book. You're going to go through every
That's what I tell
single
people. You
one
have your
of those accounts.
CSM meeting where you talk about stuff. That's a
Right.
different meeting. This is a
That's a
forecast
totally
meeting.
different meeting.
And I
Yes.
really advise anybody, especially the ones who have never been in a sales pipeline, to go sit in a sales pipeline,
Yes.
because you'll be like, you'll see, when's this deal closing?
Right.
I sent this email to them, like, did you follow up on that? No. It's like you learn this is how it gets done. Not like, oh, I'll send the renewal out, then they said it'll be fine. Those are the ones where, unexpected churn starts coming up, right? So,
Yeah, I think that is a really good point, Jeff, is that I think you should go, if you've never done forecasting and you're being asked to do it, go sit in your sales leaders pipeline meeting and go, no,
They're brutal.
really,
They're
it's
brutal. They're
great.
brutal.
They're
Yeah,
brutal, but you will learn so much and you will understand the right questions to be asking your CSMs or your CSM managers about what the book looks like.
Yeah. Awesome. Is there more? I think we covered a lot, right? Got a good
We did cover a lot.
Yeah. Amazing for an unprepared podcast, how much we went through.
How much of this are you going to actually edit, though?
I'm pretty much just going to hit stop and upload. I think.
No, then you can't do that. There has to be there's got to be some of this that you edit out, right? Because
I mean, I don't do any of this. I send it over to a foreign country and let them have at it. But
well,
I will tell them to make you look really smart and to make me look stupid, and they do a really good job at that. So Alli, fill in this question here. Blank taught me everything about blank.
Chris Comparato taught me everything I know about being a really good manager.
So what are you doing for fun this summer in Phoenix besides like bunkering down with the AC cranked?
So we have a little cabin up in the mountains, and so we like to kind of hang out at the cabin during the summertime. Lucky enough to be able to do that because here in Phoenix in July, when it's 120 degrees,
you're sitting inside playing Jenga, right?
Or you're in the pool. You're in the pool with all the umbrellas over the pool.
Yeah, that's
and the margaritas.
I've heard. Speaking of margaritas, I will see you next week. In a few days. It's amazing.
In a few days. That's right. I'm excited about the band.
Yeah, that's good. We don't have to talk about that here. I think I've talked about that one time too many. So Alli, I'm gonna stop the recording, right? And then we're gonna chat for a moment after that, right?
Okay.
Thanks so much for having you on. We'll put all your LinkedIn stuff because you're super active on LinkedIn. So we'll make sure people get to catch all of your updates, your daily stuff. We'll go from there.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.